something strange about this diner. It's been 12 years since it happened, and I can still remember it. Sometimes I even have nightmares about it, and I end up screaming in terror in the middle of the night. It was a cold night, and I was driving through the vast openness of Texas on a business trip. I had been driving 4 hours by then, and I was determined to get to my destination. But as time flew by, the hunger set in, and I began to consider stopping somewhere to eat when I saw a hitchhiker standing alone on the side of the road. He was wearing dirty clothes and looked like he was halfway done digging his grave. I decided to let him into my car and drive him for a while. "Thanks, son," he said with a raspy voice. "No problem, sir," I replied. For about half an hour I drove in complete silence when I finally said to him, "So, where are you trying to get to?" He froze as we passed a sign that said, "Come on down to the Dinewell Diner for a fun time and a good meal." The man just sat there saying nothing for a while. I tried to engage in a conversation multiple times, but he wouldn't budge. I could hear him making quiet, nervous noises until another sign that said the diner was only 2 miles away. At that point, the man screamed and jumped out of the car while saying, "Stay away from that diner. It's evil." "Wait, no," I shouted. At that time, I thought he was just crazy, and I drove the rest of the way stunned and quiet, oblivious about what he meant. I finally saw a light coming from a small building. I drove into the parking lot and stopped my car. It was the diner from the billboard. I got out of the car and walked through the door of the diner. There was someone with a diamond ring sitting at one of the tables. A bell at the top of the door rang, and I spotted a silhouette in the kitchen. I sat at a table and waited. The door behind the counter opened, and the smiling man walked out of the kitchen. He walked to the table where the other person was sitting and handed him his order. The man began eating, and after a couple of bites, he began coughing. "Can I speak to the chef?" he asked. "Yes, of course, sir," said the waiter happily. They both walked behind the counter and into the kitchen. I could hear some type of argument coming from the kitchen, followed by a scream. "No!" The worker walked out smiling and finally came to my table. "May I take your order?" he said. "Just a burger, please," I replied. "Yes, sir," said the man as he walked back into the kitchen. I waited and noticed that there was what looked like a few drops of dry blood on the menu. Before I could think about what he meant, the waiter opened the door with my food on a tray in his hand. "Here's your order, sir," the waiter said. "Thanks," I said back to him. He left and I began eating. It tasted a bit strange, but at that point, I could have eaten anything. At one point, I bit something hard, pulled the substance out of my mouth, and saw it was a diamond ring. The same diamond ring the man from earlier was wearing. Terrified, I went to the bathroom. I started splashing water on my face and I smelled something strange. Normally inside of a public restroom, weird smells were uncommon, but this smelled different. Like rotting meat. I realized that it was coming from the stalls and I slowly walked towards one of them. I shoved open the door and held my screams as I saw a rotting corpse sitting there. I opened the other stalls and it was the same for them too. I ran out of the diner into my car, but the tires had been slashed. Knowing there was nothing else for miles and miles, I went back into the diner and was surprised to see that the waiter was standing there. "How was the burger?" he asked. "It was fine, thank you. How much is it?" I said back to him. "It's on the house," he said. We both stared at each other for a couple of seconds before he asked, "Would you like to see our kitchen?" No, thank you," I said nervously. Don't worry, sir. It's free of charge, he said happily. Fine, I replied with tears in my eyes. When we got back there, I screamed at what I saw. There were piles of bodies, weapons everywhere. I tried getting out of the door, but it was locked. May we see your resume? We can't hire you without it, the waiter said cheerily. Stay away from me, you creep, I shouted. Grab a wooden spoon and turn on the stove. What's the matter? Don't you want to be part of the family? He asked. I lit the spoon on fire and threw it at him. He screamed in pain and fell onto the floor, slowly lighting everything around him. I broke down the kitchen door and ran out of the diner as it slowly burned. Ran for hours after that. I finally made it to the small town and reported it to the sheriff. They went to the burned diner but found nothing. After years of therapy and recovery, I finally thought I had gotten over it. Until a week ago, when a new restaurant opened near me. A new restaurant owned by a man named Mr. Dinewell.
Oh.